their rooms and await further information. Sky's Ashish Joshi joins me now from our central London studio. Ashish, there seems to be more cases in various different countries, and the situation in Tenerife obviously is a concern because there's 1,000 people involved.
Yeah, and a lot of the people there were due to fly home but couldn't because of a sandstorm which kept them trapped on the island, and now they will find that they will probably be looking at a long period of quarantine, up to 14 days. That's what's happened elsewhere. If somebody has tested positive for coronavirus, then there is a lockdown, a quarantine zone is put into place, and movement in and out of the hotel or the building or the ship, as we saw with the Diamond Princess, is extremely limited. Already some of the holiday makers who are in this hotel, the H10 Costa Adeje Palace in southern Tenerife, they've been speaking to the media saying that they're really concerned. There doesn't seem to be strict quarantine protocols in place. Members of staff are walking around. And with that, you have a heightened risk of spreading this virus. But they are looking at least 14 days. That's certainly what has happened elsewhere around the world, and that's what the World Health Organization guidelines are for quarantine. And then once it's all clear, they will be allowed to leave the hotel. That's if no other cases there are identified. So the Foreign Office say they are supporting staff. They have issued a statement, and I'll read it to you. It says, "Our staff are offering advice and support to a number of British people in a hotel in Tenerife and their families. We are in close contact with the hotel management and the Spanish authorities and are seeking further information." So this is a fast developing story. Lots of developments today around the world. We have the situation in Tenerife. I've come back from a press briefing at the Department of Health where they were talking about the situation in Iran. They say that is what worries them quite a bit because of the modelling. If you use the modelling that the government uses, the number of cases identified, the number of deaths suggests that there will be a great many more identified in Iran over the coming days. And they say that the guidelines for people travelling from Iran are very different. What you have in Italy, it's only the northern Italy region above Pisa, not including Pisa, but above Pisa. If you have the symptoms, then you are asked to self-isolate. But if you have travelled from Iran, whether or not you have symptoms, you will be asked to self-isolate for up to 2 weeks. And that's because they simply don't know what the situation is like inside the country. We had pictures of the deputy health minister in Iran. I think we can show these to you, where it was suspected that he had coronavirus. That's him on the left of your screen. You can see him wiping his brow there, obviously running a fever or a temperature. It has since been confirmed that he does indeed have coronavirus, and that's been confirmed by a local media agency. So even the deputy health minister not safe from coronavirus in his country. So the British government saying they are worried about the situation in Iran. Sarah Jane, I also want to bring you a little bit of breaking news from Public Health England. They've put out a statement today saying they've enhanced their surveillance systems to detect cases, or early warning system for cases of COVID-19. What the British government, NHS and Public Health England have done in the past, only tracking suspected cases of COVID-19 coronavirus. Now they have an enhanced surveillance system where they are asking up to 8 hospitals to take part in these trials. This is what they would use over there, the winter crisis, to track cases of flu. Anyone presenting with symptoms, but not suspected symptoms of coronavirus, just respiratory disorders or flu-like symptoms, they will be monitored. And this is a way of Public Health England and the NHS of just seeing how many cases there are across the NHS. If there is a spike, if there is a pattern, that could give an early indication or a warning of suspected coronavirus cases. So that is a marked departure from the surveillance that they've been using so far to track coronavirus cases in this country. And according to Public Health England, it's because they're taking a much more stringent approach to the spread of this potential, or the potential spread of this coronavirus in the UK.
Ashish, thank you. We've just got breaking bit of news regarding COVID-19 from Spain. This is a confirmed case of COVID-19 in Barcelona. Authorities there say they have activated the protocol for coronavirus after a patient tested positive in Barcelona. The patient had travelled within the last few days to the north of Italy. We understand that is happening in Barcelona. We'll keep you up to date on that latest case here on Sky News. Let's take a look at some of today's other news now. And a damning report into child sexual abuse at Westminster has revealed a series of cover-ups, which meant that high-profile offenders, including MPs, were protected from prosecution. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse says politicians valued reputation more than the fate of the children involved. And breaking news in reaction to that report and inquiry, Lord Steele, former Liberal Party leader, has now resigned from the Liberal Democrats and will resign as a member of the House of Lords. Now, he told that inquiry that he failed to pass on allegations against Sir Cyril Smith, even though he assumed them to be true, because he regarded it as past history. Lord Steele said, knowing all I now know, I condemn Cyril Smith's actions towards children. Not having secured a parliamentary scalp, I fear that I have been made a proxy for Cyril Smith. Well, that's the reaction of Lord Steele within the last few minutes. He is stepping down. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Joe Pike in Westminster. So this is the beginning of the fallout from this inquiry that was published earlier today, Joe.
That's right. Lord Steele, of course, resigning from the party that he once led because of his actions, or rather his inaction, in the 1970s and 1980s. In the 70s and 80s, he was the leader of the Liberal Party, the predecessor party to the Liberal Democrats. And at that time, not long after the Jeremy Thorpe scandal, Cyril Smith, the Rochdale MP, was one of his parliamentarians. Cyril Smith was a paedophile who abused boys over many decades, but he died in 2010 and was never held to account for his actions. Now, what was most damning in all of the evidence that David Steele gave to the inquiry was when he said he assumed that Cyril Smith had abused young boys but did not act. Now, victims claim they were abused after that inaction, and David Steele later nominated Cyril Smith for a knighthood. So the fact that he is stepping down from the party that he once led, perhaps before he was going to be expelled, and also leaving the House of Lords, which he's a proud member of. This is a man who has, for many decades in the Commons and the Lords, been a big fixture in the politics of this country. And his career in politics coming now to a pretty embarrassing end.
Joe, thank you. Joe Pike with the reaction to that Westminster child abuse scandal inquiry. The former Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein is today facing up to 29 years in prison after he was convicted yesterday of sexual assault and rape. Well, dozens of women have accused him of sexual misconduct. He has always strenuously denied the allegations made against him. Well, let's speak to the journalist Nikki Hodgson about yesterday's verdict and what happens now. She joins us from our central London newsroom. Nikki, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Sarah.
In light of Harvey Weinstein's conviction yesterday, he's due to be sentenced later in the month. What was your initial reaction? Because I've been hearing from victims who've been talking in the media, including here on Sky News, saying they almost couldn't believe that he was actually found guilty. Such is the sort of low rate of conviction when it comes to rape, especially when it comes to such a powerful figure.
Yeah, I think what was so remarkable in this case is that we knew, or certainly we know now, for years there were people that were coming out with allegations against him. And, you know, he was an extremely powerful person. The walls around him were built very firmly. There were lots of other people whose livelihoods depended on him staying in power. So there really wasn't any kind of general interest to bring him down, you could say, in many ways. But what has been so positive and remarkable has been that the jury have found him guilty and that justice has been served to some of his victims.
Yeah, justice served to some of his victims, just two of the dozens of women who made allegations. Of course, there are a whole raft of women who couldn't have their day in court simply because so much time had elapsed since the alleged assault. But will this be seen as an overall victory to them as well, to be able to say today that Harvey Weinstein is a convicted rapist?
I certainly think that people will feel vindicated watching this trial play out the way it has. Obviously, for many victims, the gamut of emotions they go through is really extreme, and there'll be some people who probably feel cheated that they haven't had their time in court, perhaps. Obviously, we've got yet to see what will happen in California when he is tried there. And, maybe there'll be some more people that receive justice under those rulings. We don't know yet. But I think certainly what this has sent out is a very powerful and strong message that it doesn't matter how much power you've got, we will find you guilty if the evidence prevails. And I think it should be really heartening for many people who have been victims of sexual abuse, assault and rape across the globe, actually.
Yeah, it's important to point out that there is much more to come in this legal process. Harvey Weinstein's legal team say he plans to appeal. You just mentioned the case that's going to be brought against him in LA, and there are a number of civil cases pending as well. So it's not done as far as the legals are concerned just yet. But I put this question to a contributor earlier on in the show, Nikki, and I want to get your take on it. Harvey Weinstein could have been brought to justice 20 years ago. But the fact that he wasn't, and the fact that a lot of these allegations were swept under the carpet, was because he was so powerful. This trial couldn't have happened unless his power was on the wane. He was sinking to the bottom of the industry, and that was when people swooped. Is that going to change?
Well, let's hope that with a case like this, it is, because, what certainly has changed in the days since that he was first accused, and also, in the England